In Cyberpunk 2077, there's more than a handful of ways to deal damage capable of causing explosive diarrhea to the enemy of your choosing. I recently discovered my personal favorite way of dealing damage in the form of a skill called Wrecking Ball, which, as the name implies, allows me to turn my body into a human wrecking ball and shoulder charge into enemies, dealing disappointing amounts of damage upon impact. When I realized you can acquire this skill very early on, I thought to myself, can you beat Cyberpunk 2077 as a human wrecking ball? I can always drown out the pain with aggressive alcohol abuse, so I chose the very hard difficulty. I made my character look like famous agricultural scientist Jonathan Sin. As for my attributes, I need 9 attribute points in body to unlock the Wrecking Ball skill, so I put everything I could in the body and the rest to reflexes.
It's time to play the game.
The prologue begins with me fixing my broken nose. It appears I may have used more than 1% of my power when fixing my nose, as I lost consciousness and woke up 6 months later next to a man who presumably took advantage of me. The man's name is Jackie Wells, and we're apparently on a mission to rescue his favorite OnlyFans creator, who's been abducted by the most deranged individuals of our Gunner base. Since I don't have the Wrecking Ball skill yet unlocked, my only option is to hide behind Jackie as he tries to kill all the psycho gooners in the building by himself. Unfortunately, Jackie is the worst mercenary in all of Night City, and he does less damage than a singular fire rant while having the durability of a Ford Focus. I spent around 30 minutes hiding to try and let Jackie get rid of the enemies by himself, but eventually lost all hope as 25 of the 30 minutes were spent simply waiting for Jackie to get out of last stand. Since the rules of the challenge, which I'm only mentioning now, clearly only state that all damage I deal must come from the Wrecking Ball skill, I decided to lower the difficulty down to easy and try again. Now that Jackie was officially the main character, he was able to deal semi-respectable damage, but more importantly, it seemed as if he couldn't die no matter how many bullets kissed his body. It took around 15 minutes of waiting, but eventually Jackie clears out the room of his fellow gooners, physically embraced the big guy to death, and were able to rescue Jackie's favorite Christian creator, Sensor Dorset. On the car ride home, I'm put into one of many car chase encounters, but I can get out of this one without using my gun by simply threatening the driver with physical harm, which makes him drive into a wall and explode. In my apartment, I visited my dream world for 8 hours and woke up the next day to meet with Jackie, who tells me we've been hired to do a big job. This couldn't have come at a better time, as I recently spent all my money on some certified chick magnet drip from Temu. So, eager to make that money back, I went to meet with the fixer who hired us. He tells me the job is to steal the digitized version of the legendary Ninja's Guide to Gaming book, which, if the legends are true, makes the person who reads it the greatest gamer in the multiverse. Before the big job though, I have to acquire a piece of military hardware vital to the heist and meet with the client who put the job on the table in the first place. I was only one level off of getting the Wrecking Ball skill, so with no way of dealing damage or having Jackie help me, I remembered the location of a gig that doesn't require any combat at all. All I have to do is break in this nice establishment, ignore the dozens of bullets while stealing someone's eyeball, and deliver it to the drop point to level up and finally get the Wrecking Ball skill. Now that I had unlocked my only way of dealing damage, I called Meredith Stout to set up a meet with her, so she'll give me the money I need to acquire the Flathead from Maelstrom. Next, I meet with Jackie right outside the gang's hideout. We walk in there like swimwear. I briefly turned into an antivirus to rid the money chip of the malware, and I let myself get ripped off by Royce because I'm slightly attracted to him and his beautiful eyes. I don't know. Now that I had the Flathead in my hands and the semi-hard-on in my pants, Militech assaults the building, and I have to Wrecking Ball my way out of the hideout. Fortunately, most of the enemies can actually just be avoided completely, and I can simply run past all of them until I arrive at this final room with 2 mechs and a few Militech soldiers standing in my way. One cool thing about the Wrecking Ball skill is that if you continuously run into an enemy while slightly moving left and right, you can actually hit them multiple times in a quick succession. Pulling off that combo feels very satisfying and powerful, but don't be fooled, I would still be doing more damage with one heavy attack with my fists compared to like 10 hits of the Wrecking Ball. Also, having to be so close to the enemy that some of their sweat occasionally drips into my mouth just to be able to deal any damage at all got me very close to seeing the pearly gates a few times in this encounter. In the end, my body weight hitting pure titanium at 20 miles per hour came out on top and we're free to leave the hideout with only minor scratches to my elbow. Next, it was time to meet with the client who put the job on the table. She said, "Things." Next, it was time to meet with the heist squad at the Afterlife, and we learned that the Ninja's Guide to Gaming digital book was purchased by famous League of Legends player Yorinobu Arasaka, and that it's being kept at the very top floor of Konpeki Plaza Hotel. After a short Uber ride, we arrive at Konpeki Plaza, enter our honeymoon suite, use the Flathead to take out the security systems, and walk in the penthouse to get our hands on the greatest piece of literature ever written. We're forced to hide in the walls as Yorinobu comes up to his penthouse to greet his guest, who turns out to be his League of Legends rival going by the esports handle Saburo. Saburo had recently won against Yorinobu in a league tournament and had come here to gloat and talk shit right to his face. Unfortunately for Saburo, Yorinobu was willing to do anything if it meant becoming the #1 ranked League of Legends player in the world. Even murder. Luckily, my cybernetic eyes recorded the whole thing, and my new mission was now to escape the building so I can expose Yorinobu to the world as the fraud he is. A drone packed with 2 50 caliber miniguns is blocking our exit, so I jump off the roof and use the Wrecking Ball skill to break the glass roof below me. The hotel security was on high alert and I was deep behind enemy lines, so escape was going to be tough. The one unique advantage of the Wrecking Ball skill that ultimately made this challenge much easier than I anticipated is that the first hit always knocks enemies down to the ground where they take around 5 seconds to get back up. There is about a 5 to 10 second, I'm not sure, I never counted, cooldown to the knockdown ability, but even with that cooldown, I could always get behind cover when I'm low HP, and once my HP was back up and the cooldown was done, I would emerge from the shadows like some sort of professional assassin or a pedophile, ready to commit atrocities upon the first person in my field of view. Another great thing about the Wrecking Ball skill is that it gives you a pretty major speed boost, which makes doing drive-bys a pretty effective strategy to deal damage while barely getting hit in the process. When I came up with this challenge, I really expected it to be one of my hardest challenges yet, but who could have guessed that elbow tackling someone's skull repeatedly, causing severe internal bleeding in the brain, is actually surprisingly lethal. Once I made it downstairs, I simply ran past all the enemies towards the elevator, got in the getaway vehicle, had to use my gun to progress, and right before Jackie dies, he inserts the Ninja's Guide to Gaming book in my brain hole for safekeeping. I arrived at the safe house and told the fixer all about how Yorinobu is a fraud who only became the #1 league player by eliminating his rival. Little did I know, the fixer was actually Yorinobu's biggest sponsor, and to keep this a secret, he betrays me and killed several of my neurons by shooting me in the head. When I got shot in the head, the Ninja's Ultimate Guide to Gaming digitized interactive visual book that's in my head brought my consciousness inside the book, and I was now reading the tutorial called Ninja's Guide to Planting a Nuclear Bomb inside corporate headquarters. After successfully completing the tutorial successfully, Ninja's Ultimate Guide to Gaming digitized visual audio-infused book deems me worthy enough to live, and it reboots my body. I crawl out of the trash heap to find Takemura, the former bodyguard of the previous #1 league player Saburo. Takemura knew that I had recorded proof of Yorinobu's fraudulent uprise to the #1 position and had come to save me so we can expose him to the whole world. Unfortunately, Takemura never got his license, so he ends up crashing the car into a nearby pole. I woke up in a hospital that looks like a homeless shelter, and I'm given the crushing news that the Ninja's Ultimate Guide to Gaming Like a Boss digitized audio-infused book that's in my head is too powerful for my neurons and is slowly killing me. I meet up with Takemura to tell him that I would help him expose Yorinobu as long as he helps me stop the greatest piece of literature ever written from turning my brain into baked beans. After an intense debate, we came to the conclusion that while Takemura follows his own leads, I would track down the client who hired me for the heist, and Anders Hellman, the genius who digitized the original paper copy of the Ninja's Ultimate Guide to Gaming book. I decided to start by visiting a local fixer named Rogue for information on Anders Hellman's whereabouts. She gives me Hellman's precise coordinates for $15,000 and as a bonus gives me the number of Panam Palmer so I can try and recruit her to assist me in my snatch and grab mission. On my way to see Panam Palmer, the 34 liters of beer residing in my body had finally taken its toll, resulting in a few civilian casualties along the way. Only a few minutes later, I had somehow gotten myself in a bit of a pickle of a situation involving a lot of dead police officers and half of Night City's police force after me for allegedly being involved in this whole situation. Once I arrived at Panam's last known location, I asked her if she would be interested in risking her life to help me for free, but she's a greedy bitch who's only willing to help me if I help her get a new car. She had gotten information from somewhere, it's a real place, look it up, that there was going to be a car meet tonight at Rocky Ridge, and that's where we would acquire her new car. At Rocky Ridge, we wait until nightfall for the car meet to take place, and once they arrive, I commence Operation Let There Be Light because why not? It's not like this is a surprise attack or anything. You could argue that turning on the lights is not a very smart move, but at the same time, you really have to think about the perspective of the enemies in this situation. How would you feel if you showed up to a car meet and all of a sudden the abandoned town lights up like the Middle East and you see a man with no chrome foaming at the mouth while he runs through your entire extended family? Safe to say that the shock factor alone killed half of them while I did the other half, and eventually we got Panam a new truck. In return, she's now willing to help me capture Hellman, and we set up shop on a nearby mountain to wait for Hellman's AV to come in our field of view. Once we have eyes on the AV, Panam shoots it down with an RPG, and we chase after it as it slowly makes its way towards the ground. At the crash site, I once again proved that the most technologically advanced AI-controlled robots made of pure titanium are no match for a mentally deranged man running at them at 20 miles per hour. I open up the AV only to find the pilot of the said AV holding one of his own as hostage. Not sure what he thought was gonna happen. Before he died though, he let it slip that Anders Hellman was hiding at a nearby gas station, so I make my way over there hitting some sick flips along the way. I arrived at the gas station and finally died for the first time during this run when I tried to headbutt a 50 caliber machine gun turret. I reincarnated as a war criminal, did a war crime, and captured Anders Hellman. I interrogated him for a few exciting minutes, but in the end, all he gives me is his number. Useless if I'm trying to save my life, but helpful if I'm ever looking for a good time. Next, I arrive at the workplace of the client Evelyn Parker, who hired me for the heist. I had to embrace my slightly less heterosexual side as I plowed my way through countless men of varied sizes until I eventually found the manager of this place. He didn't have much to say as he was too busy choking on my elbow, but I was able to search his computer for information on Evelyn's whereabouts. She was into a local ripper dog called Fingers, so I arrived at his clinic, asked a few polite questions by beating the life out of him, and he gives me her last known location. Before the script magically takes me to her last known location, Can you believe that in my 600 hours of playtime, this is the first time I noticed this iconic weapon sitting here just a few feet from Finger's lifeless body? Anyways, after witnessing a classic New York City tale of a drug deal gone wrong, I arrived at Evelyn Parker's last known location. Trying to rescue Evelyn Parker from these Epstein wannabes increased my death count by 500%, bringing my total death count so far from a measly 1 to a crushing 5. Luckily, you're able to wield a melee weapon while using the Wrecking Ball skill, which is pretty useful as the new iconic weapon I just found allows me to deal electrical and chemical damage even though I'm hitting the enemies with my elbow. It also has a small chance to apply poison and/or shock, which is a nice added bonus to an already good weapon. After introducing blunt force trauma and lifelong PTSD to these degenerate kidnappers, I find Evelyn looking a little dehydrated. I brought her back home, and by invading her memories I learn that she was hired by a gang called the Voodoo Boys. The Voodoo Boys operate out of the swollen, slightly discolored hemorrhoid of Night City called Pacifica, so naturally, that was my next destination. After asking every black guy I saw if they're a part of the gang, I'm eventually led to Placide, who is in fact a member of the Voodoo Boys. I asked Placide if I can speak to the Voodoo Boys leader, so I could maybe get some information about the brain cancer-inducing Ninja's Ultimate Guide to Gaming book that's in my head. He promised me a sit-down with their leader, but only if I broke into the local Planet Fitness and stole all their customer data as revenge for kicking Placide out of the gym for setting off the lunk alarm. I arrived at the gym, and as expected of the local Planet Fitness in Pacifica, this place was full of steroid-abusing, domestically violent, raging alcoholic psychopaths. It goes without saying that this was definitely the most amount of meat my elbow has had to tackle so far during this challenge. Fortunately, my old friend Dor is still as strong as ever, and the enemy AI was now even dumber than before since their brains had turned into pure muscle from the heavy steroid abuse. By abusing the Dor strategy, I'm once again able to sit behind it for as long as I need until my HP goes back up, and then use my shoulder ninjutsu to discombobulate the opposition. These roid-raging Planet Fitness members were by far the most resilient enemies I've come against so far, and I even came close to dying a couple of times. But eventually, I dropped enough bodies to break the lunk alarm inside the gym, tried to download the data, but was cut off mid-download by the Planet Fitness manager that was hiding somewhere in the building. Before I can even get to the manager, I have to deal with the most elite member of Planet Fitness going by the nickname Sasquatch. Not gonna lie, Sasquatch couldn't be a more fitting name for the biggest and most certainly the hairiest woman I've ever laid my eyes upon. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that my elbow didn't shatter into 5 different pieces when I elbow tackled right into 450 pounds of pure muscle mass. The fight got a little close for comfort towards the end as the regional manager almost succeeded in uploading 10 zettabytes of Panam feed pics in my brain, but using the drive-by strategy, I'm able to eliminate the mystical creature of legend before that could happen. Next, I finally got my hands on the regional manager, downloaded the customer data from his brain, and returned to Placide to let him know of my successful mission at Planet Fitness. As promised, I was now able to speak to the Voodoo Boys leader Brigitte, and we entered the Ninja's Ultimate Guide to Gaming Like a Boss visualized interactive audio-infused gaming book for clues on how to remove it from my head. I don't think I mentioned this the last time I was playing as Johnny Silverhand, but the reason I'm using his gun is because you can't use the Wrecking Ball skill as Johnny Silverhand. After completing another masterclass in domestic terrorism, it's revealed that Brigitte never had any way of helping me because she's an idiot sandwich poopy head. Just as I was feeling hopeless about my inevitable demise, Takemura calls me and lets me know he's got a new lead for us to follow. I meet him at the specified location, and he tells me the plan is to infiltrate an upcoming parade and kidnap the current number 2 League of Legends player Hanako. We're hoping that once we give her the proof that Yorinobu killed the previous number 1 League of Legends player, she'll become the new number 1 and as a result have the resources available to help me with my terminal illness. This is the first time that I had no way of using any stealth during this mission, and as expected, it went about as well as eating a Crunchwrap Supreme from Taco Bell right before a 12-hour flight. The difficulty of this challenge run had suddenly been amped up so hard that I was slipping in and out of consciousness from the pure rage that was building up inside of me. At one point, for reasons unknown to even myself, I somehow found myself joining the parade for a brief period of time before suffering a rage-induced heart attack. After a substantial amount of trial and error, I was able to take out the security forces and make my way to the human CCTV camera where I'm attacked by Hanako's personal bodyguard, Oda. By this point of the run, I had already leveled up quite a lot and purchased cyberware like the Sandevistan and double jump legs, which ultimately made this fight pretty easy. Just like with Sasquatch, the hit and run tactic was very effective against Oda, although it did require a little more finesse as Oda's smaller size makes him faster and more accurate than Sasquatch ever was. All was going well until I got him down to 1% HP, after which Oda reveals that he was only using 0.1% of his power this whole time. No matter how many times I elbowed him to the face, shot him with a double-barrel shotgun, or mag dumped my SMG into him, he simply would not go below 1% HP. In the end, it does seem as if I was never the main character, and I was simply just a puppet for Oda to play with and discard when he got bored. After respawning, I did the exact same thing that I did last time, except in this reality, Oda doesn't have any hidden superpowers and ends up going down pretty easily, and I'm able to hack the CCTV cameras so Takemura can kidnap Hanako. The parade security was understandably a little upset, so I make my exit out of there and meet up with Takemura at his hideout so I can speak to Hanako about my offer. Before we can finish our conversation, Yorinobu's security forces bust in the building and kidnap Hanako before I could tell her the truth about Yorinobu. I wake up with a slight hangover and make my way upstairs to save my best friend and future lover Takemura. I used my ultimate move, Wrecking Ball, to take the consciousness of at least 3 Special Forces soldiers attacking Takemura and used my Sandevistan to escape the building with Takemura. Sometime later, according to the game, a proxy for Hanako shows up, and once I exposed Yorinobu's crimes against gaming, she agrees to save my life as long as we take Yorinobu down first. Sometime later, according to my script, I popped a double dose of Viagra and called up Hanako on the holo. She tells me that she's being held hostage at Yorinobu's mansion, so me, I, Anders Hellman, I, and Takemura, and I ride out to her mansion to free her. This mission, still to this day, gives me regular nightmares that end up painting my bedsheets in diarrhea color, and so far, there's only been one challenge run where this mission wasn't my 13th reason why. That is, until now. I was pleasantly surprised at how viable using only the Wrecking Ball skill really is for combat during the late game. When it came to 1v1s, the Wrecking Ball skill may actually even be broken, as I can knock them down for a solid 5 seconds, and while they're defenseless, hit them with the meanest combo this side of the stratosphere. After introducing lifelong defecation in a bag to the rest of the guards surrounding the mansion, I free Hanako from captivity, we take her private jet to Riot Games headquarters, and arrive at the Riot Games board meeting to expose Yorinobu as a fraud. Unfortunately, Yorinobu knew of our plans ahead of time and sent Special Forces soldiers to wipe out the whole board. I did what every good citizen should do in my situation, which is put my life at risk to protect the people who actually matter, the shareholders. I ran past the rest of the enemies in my way, and once I turned this final room into my own personal slaughterhouse, I could finally get my hands on Yorinobu. Unfortunately, there was one final obstacle in my way: Yorinobu's personal bodyguard, Atom Smasher. There is not really much to say about this fight. I was such a high level with skills like Adrenaline Rush to boost my survivability, and had acquired some decent cyberware, so dying was more of a choice than a natural occurrence at this point. The whole fight is just me abusing the multiple hit combo, or doing the hit and run method, so my damage to damage taken ratio was pretty positive throughout this whole fight. Even his minions joining the fight made no difference at all, as I was able to take them out nearly instantly and get right back to running into the block of stainless steel called Atom Smasher. In the end, I had really turned into an unstoppable force, and not even Atom Smasher could stand a chance against my final form. All that was left was to introduce Yorinobu to lifelong humiliation, and I beat Cyberpunk 2077 as a human wrecking ball. If you enjoyed the video, become the President of the United States and make it mandatory by law to subscribe to my channel. If you disliked the video, secretly slip estrogen in my water supply to turn me into a femboy.